The film of the book was kinda miraculous in itself. 3 established directors, sure, but wielding a dense and complex underlying property that would have never gotten made under a studio system. And by all accounts wouldn't have been made if Tom Hanks hadn't given his weighty name to it. One wonders what he saw in the novel.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I love playing Dermot Hoggins. Because he got to throw a critic off a balcony to his horrible crushing death. That was my favorite. Oh God, how I loved it.
He's the nicest guy in Hollywood. It's a bit easier to see what Tickwer and the Wachowskis saw in it. They both have a history of being drawn to high-concept genre pieces that take big chances with format and dabble across multiple philosophies. And bad sex scenes. In adapting the novel, they did the normal work of medium transfers, truncating some stories, dropping a few characters, highlighting some themes, and diminishing others, but their biggest changes were twofold. First, they got rid of the nesting doll structure and made the film into a mosaic. Second, they chose to bring the migrating souls thing to the forefront by sextuple casting nearly everyone in the film. And oh, the wailing and gnashing of teeth. Most every critic who saw this film hated the makeup. And yes. Keith, David, what even the f*** are you? And I agree, it is very distracting. Not a second goes by when you can't expect GAH! Trash humper! That it takes you out of the experience and BAH! Dana Carvey as a turtle! And that it prevents you from Da Ali Gump Show! Anyway, a lot of people said that it was alienating. And you know what? It is alienating. In a Brechtian sense. Longtime viewers might remember my episode on Angels in America, the HBO adaptation of Tony Kushner's Pulitzer Prize-winning play. It also used a relatively small cast appearing and reappearing in multiple roles. Kushner did this in homage to Bertolt Brecht's technique of Verfremdungseffekt, or the alienation effect. Brecht's techniques often broke the fourth wall, using title cards at the beginning of scenes, speaking directly to the audience, and yes, double and triple casting. The idea was to jar the audience out of believing the action on stage and getting them to think about the action on stage. You're supposed to have a reaction to seeing the same woman who played the nurse and the beggar play the Angel of America, just as how seeing the couple who play Sonmi and Heiju playing Adam and Tilda Ewing is meant to force your mind to draw a parallel. Now, the performances themselves are a mixed bag, ranging from understated and poignant, to rote and dull, to this man has how many Oscars again?
Do you know the price a quarter pound of these will earn?
But if anything is an ensemble piece, this is it. Not individual performances, but how they fit together. Having the same cast appear and reappear enforces the theme of eternal recurrence and encourages the audience to think less about the stories individually and instead think of them in relation to each other. It's a decent substitute for the book's intertextuality, but it does cause problems. Like, there is no more Mark. Mark does not exist as a character. Instead, we have a group of characters jumping from body to body in each story, with each new incarnation supposedly showing a karmic punishment or reward for their actions in a previous life. This in mind, Tom Hanks' character has an arc made out of whole cloth. The book implies no connection between Henry Goose, Isaac Sachs, Duster Hoggins, or Valisman Zachary, but the film creates an arc for this soul, slowly overcoming his history of backstabbing and violence to finally rejecting temptation by Cajun Satan Grinch.
Now drop that row. Drop that row.
And then the full truth of Cloud Atlas came through, and the Hanks found the strength of 10 Hankses, plus 2. And even if the arc worked, it's told out of order, so any emotional impact the arc would have would just be cast away. Ha. Hell, they tried to market the movie on Tom Hanks' non-arc. And oh, did they try.
I'm Dr. Henry Goose.
I'm Isaac Sachs.
I'm Dermot Duster Hoggins.
And I'm Valisman Zachary. Together we are a manifestation of the same spirit through time, sharing a common universal human yearning!
Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes, Stephen.
Go see Cloud Atlas.
Now, the comet in the book is implied to be the soul traveling from body to body, but now it's implied that the souls are represented by the actors playing them. The comet is superfluous to this added jigamawatts of karmic punishments and rewards and couples finding each other across time and space after losing each other and blah blah blah. So, why keep the comet at all? Other than a reminder of this protagonist here. Of course, this team has a history of poorly planned conceptualism. The Wachowskis in particular have trouble keeping their themes straight. Guys, you're not deep just because your action movie quotes Baudrillard.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
It's like they find great concepts and unique ways to implement them, but they don't fully consider the implications of what it means and— Alright, stalling is over. We need to talk about the big, ugly thing that has haunted this movie. Cloud Atlas has been accused of horribly insensitive, racist portrayals of Scottish people. Buck-toothed, whiskey-swilling, soccer-obsessed gingers willing to start a fight at the drop of a— I am just kidding. I am talking about Yellowface. This, more than anything else, this is what most likely sank the movie. The cries and yells of argle, flargle, blargle racism over the practice of putting the non-Asian cast members into Asian makeup. Really, really crappy Asian makeup. And now a scene from Future Soul. Hey, Junseo, how's it hangin'? Well, Hyun-woo, nothing's the same since the Romulans took over. Waitress, more cauliflower! Now, Yellowface is of course the old practice of putting white actors into Asian-looking makeup to play Asian characters. Cause, you know, no one can play an Asian person like a European. Of course, apologists for the practice in this movie point out that, yes, they also do the reverse. An Asian actress is put into whiteface. Asian people look like Romulans, and white people look like the Bride of Chucky. Fair deal, right? No? In their official response, the Media Action Network for Asian Americans pointed out that there were roles essentially robbed from Asian actors. Some poor Korean American lost the role of Hae-Ju Chang to a white Brit. What's more, the Asian roles that existed riffed on more than a few stereotypes. The Fabricants are submissive Asian women who all look the same. They also pointed out that while many actors donned yellowface, and even whiteface, for some reason the directors had the guile not to put anyone in blackface. Because that would be insensitive and wrong, and that would upset our audience, you know? So, no African person makeup. Asian person makeup? Yeah. Of course, this is the result of the movie's sextuple casting and its recurring theme that boundaries are conventions.
All boundaries are conventions.
Yes, I just said that. And those boundaries include genre and class and sex and, yes, race. So it's either dump the reincarnation motif or Charlie Chan versus Fu Manchu. Of course, I already said that doing reincarnation like that wasn't integral to the book's themes and may have in fact muddled it, so duffa. So if I can't justify the face that way, what about in the story? Maybe? I don't know, just humor me. Follow me down this little problematic pathway we're going on. I had assumed the film was first cast by getting the protagonist for each of the 6 lead roles. Ben Whishaw nailed the part of Robert Frobisher, Jim Broadbent aced Timothy Cavendish, and Bae Doona was a pitch-perfect Sunmi 451. And after that was done, they cast the other roles around that. Now in the book, her story is more interested in Sunmi's evolution from servant to revolutionary, and spends more time watching her learn about the world she inhabits, while the movie takes a more action-y route. They're doing Neo Seoul via Neo Tokyo. The Wachowskis like anime. Who knew? But the world remains the same. It's set in a future where one of the last empires on a mostly polluted Earth is a future high-tech Korea ruled by a corpocracy. It's a mix of late capitalistic fetishized consumerism and autocratic dehumanizing juche. Basically, the inevitable result when this finally reunites with this. This future Korea, or Nia Sokopros in the novel, runs on a form of slave labor via the use of fabricants. Like Blade Runner's replicants, they're very similar to humans, albeit grown rather than born. The story of Sunmi 451 has several key players, 1 or 2 fabricants, and a lot of natural borns. All of them are played by non-Asian actors in makeup, save for Bae Doona and Cho Shun. who are Korean and Chinese, respectively. Both of their characters are fabricants. The supposedly natural-born characters are buried under unnatural faces, and the supposedly fabricated characters have the least amount of makeup. Is that a deliberate irony? What's more, it's possible that these characters aren't even ethnic Korean.
May I say you speak consumer surprisingly well.
Unanimity 대부분들이 한 가지 하나밖에 못한다는 게 참 안타깝죠.
As an officer of unanimity, I am of course restricted from using subspeak.
Consumer and subspeak instead of English and Korean. It's possible that whoever the ruling classes in this society are, they are no longer ethnic Korean. Whatever they are far removed from the average Korean to the point where the Korean language is no longer spoken by the upper classes. So it's possible that Sunmi, Yuna, and every other fabricant might be the remnants of some cloned generation of original Koreans. But that's in-universe speculation. Out of universe, it might be a deliberate invocation of Brecht's A effect. Since Bae-duna and Zhao Zun are the only actors out of makeup, we subconsciously reject the actors wearing the latex pieces and align ourselves with the fabricants, in a subtle evocation of the uncanny valley. So there might actually be a method to it, and not just be an insensitive piece of stunt casting. Then I found out that Sunmi 451 was originally offered to Natalie Portman. Yeah, if your first instinct with an obviously Asian role isn't to offer it to an Asian actress, yeah, I don't care how many backflips you attempt, I'm calling it. Argle, flargle, blargle, racism. But the biggest thing about this movie, the one that no one really acknowledges, is that it is so normal. Yes, normal. Ain't nothing in this movie you can't find in so many other movies. And I can already hear the cries from my audience, but there's no other film like it! Here are some other films like it. Russian Ark, Alexander SOKUROV, 2002. It was about the interconnectivity of history covering multiple centuries. Being Human, Bill Forsyth, 1994. It's about a single soul reincarnated throughout the ages. History of the World, Part 1, Mel Brooks, 1981. It is... okay, that's a stretch. Magnolia by Paul Thomas Anderson, 1999. Through a series of interconnecting relationships, multiple stories are followed across the San Fernando Valley over a single day. It is also an examination of the invisible links between individuals. Babel, Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, 2006. Multiple stories told anachronically interlinked from locations as far flung as Morocco, Japan, and the US-Mexico border. It is also about invisible links between individuals across large swaths of space. The Fountain, Darren Aronofsky, 2006. Multiple stories all following a similar theme in which all participants are played by the same cast with multiple intersections of theme and character. It is not necessarily about the invisible link between individual across things and whatever, but it is about reincarnation and recurrence of universal themes across multiple time periods. Possibly, maybe. But that's all fairly recent stuff. Are there any older works that I could possibly... The collected works of Dushin Makaweyev, in particular, W.R. Mysteries of the Organism. If you've seen my review of that, you'll know that it was also made of multiple parts spread across different time periods, locations, and genres. Only one of those had any kind of story, the one with the Yugoslavian sex-positive communists, but it was meshed with a documentary about sexologist Wilhelm Reich, footage from Soviet and Maoist propaganda, interviews with a Warhol superstar, and an underground rock star wandering New York wearing a helmet and masturbating a gun. Disparate elements set against each other to illuminate a central idea. That idea being, of course, sex is good and suppression of sex is bad. It's not dissimilar from Cloud Atlas's approach. Multiple players all marching to the tune of oppression and greed are bad, liberation and altruism are good. And the big thing? The movie that most resembles Cloud Atlas is one of the oldest and most influential films ever made. If you've ever studied the early history of film, or played L.A. Noire, you know Intolerance as D.W. Griffith's even more ambitious, even more groundbreaking, even less money-making follow-up to his smash hit cinematic convention-defining Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation, of course, codified every tiny thing we don't think about with movies, including a 3-hour running time and a big climatic chase. And it's a love letter to the Ku Klux Klan. Every time film historians bring it up, they just kind of have to go... yeah. Like Cloud Atlas, it was a huge commercial failure, but even more like Cloud Atlas, it had multiple stories spanning location and time, all revolving around a single theme, which you can guess from the title, The 4 stories include one about the fall of Babylon, caused by intolerance between rival religious factions, the life of Christ and how intolerance in his time led to his crucifixion, a French story showing Catholic intolerance against the Protestant Huguenots during the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, and an American story about how intolerance fuels many of the day's problems. And yes, the guy who spent 3 hours filleting the KKK made a movie about how intolerance is bad. Yeah. It flopped thanks to its gargantuan budget, and an audience willing to sit through 3 hours of exciting bigotry, but not 4 hours of boring kindness, but its influence is greater than its bottom line. Now, Griffith is credited for basically inventing how stories in film are told, so he was always considered an experimental filmmaker, but in giving this moral lecture, Griffith did something radical even by today's standards. Rather than telling each story sequentially, he intercut the stories. Tell a bit of the Christ story, then a bit of Babylon, then the French story, the American, and then back to Babylon, and so on. Setting the stories against each other to make the audience consider the central message in a larger context. You know, like that thing I've been talking about for the last 30 minutes. Yeah! While it didn't make a big splash commercially, it did manage to make it over to Russia, where a fellow named Kuleshov showed it to some other fellows named Pudovkin and Eisenstein in the world's first school of film, where Kuleshov developed a theory that one image set against another image would create a third independent meaning, A plus B equals C. He used the simple example of showing a shot of a man, then a shot of a bowl of soup, creating the feeling that the man is hungry. A man looking right, followed by a shot of a man looking left, implies that the men are looking at each other. A scrambling crowd followed by a line of marching soldiers implies the power of an autocratic state and the helplessness of the proletariat. The baptism of Michael Corleone's daughter, set against the assassinations of the heads of the 5 families, imply Michael's symbolic baptism into the world of crime. An Australopithecus man throwing a bone, which then cuts to a spaceship, implies the progression of technology across thousands of years. A quick series of cuts showing someone getting progressively better at a task implies a long period of training and effort. And yes, 6 stories spanning time, location, and genre, all about the oppressed and their oppressors intercut with one another, imply that the struggle to be free is noble, just, and eternal. Intolerance is one of the first and best examples of this fundamental tenet of film theory. What I'm saying is, Cloud Atlas hinges on a cinematic technique used in nearly every movie made in the last 97 years. How is this difficult to watch? The film Cloud Atlas ends quite unlike the book. The film ends in a secure future, while the novel's final words are set in the past.
No matter what you do, it will never amount to anything more than a single drop in a limitless ocean.
What is an ocean but a multitude of drops?
Fine phrasing, and optimistic in spite of an insecure future. Marinim searches for off-world colonies in the film, giving a final reveal that Zachary's story was being told not on Earth, but on a far-off, unspoiled planet. There's no such hope in the book. The future ends with people still living off the land on an aging world without such flights of fancy to terra incognita. Instead, it goes back, and reminds us of that hope, that it is the struggle which ennobles us, not the result. The means justify the ends, while the film, for all its grandeur, is content for an easy comfort, an uncomplicated Hollywood ending. 'Cause Cloud Atlas, structure aside, is not a very complex movie. It aims for its whole to be greater than the sum of its parts, but its parts may end up being greater than its whole. Audience seem to latch on to elements of the film over the film as a whole. Heck, just go on Tumblr and search for Frobismith. Yes, it's a compendium of daw, but it's less than 1/6 of a movie. Still, daw. And the basic message is rather, basic. Doing good things is good, doing bad things is bad. Doesn't help that its tagline is so generic and vague. Everything is connected. T-Mobile. Well, it seems obvious. It's a common platitude. I mean, you learned it in kindergarten. Yes, we are connected. Yes, actions have consequences. Yes, people screw each other over, and the screwed often fight back. But sometimes those truths have to be said. Just because you learned it in kindergarten doesn't make it false. There's Ms. Rivas teaching her little toddler brain that 1 + 1 = 2, and then there's Bertrand Russell's 1910 proof published in Principia Mathematica using only symbolic logic, basic mathematical axioms, and inference rules to illustrate that 1 + 1 does in fact equal 2. Kindness is good, cruelty is bad. A simple thing said complexly. But again, this is not that complex. Bertrand Russell this ain't. And I think that's what divided critics so harshly. They read the subtext of the film expecting to find Also sprach Zarathustra. Instead, they got Sesame Street. With cannibalism. Okay, bad example. Age-old divide of cynicism and optimism, I suppose. But even then, having read the book and seen the film is the far poorer version. The novel develops its ideas more carefully, draws you into each story more fully, conveys its intellectual heft more confidently. But that doesn't make the film unsalvageable. It has some crisp, beautiful cinematography, some fine layered performances, and even the boldness of its execution deserves praise. I suppose Cloud Atlas's greatest sin is wasted opportunity. I don't know how another director might have attempted this, and as much as I would love to see Aronofsky or Anderson do this over this team, I have no clue what their versions would be like. I can't say if making a collage film would have been better than making an episodic film, but... Cloud Atlas fans. Take the movie, cut it up, put it in order, in the same order it's in the book. Make that version. I want to see it. Anyway, as it stands, this version of Cloud Atlas is the weaker one. Then again, that may not matter. There's a part of the film that I like a lot, which conveys something very, very true.
You're breaking the ruddy Anti-Incarceration Act or some ruddy thing, and I will not be subjected to criminal abuse.
This is a violation of the Ruddy Incarceration Act.
I will not be subjected to criminal abuse.
I will not be subjected to criminal abuse.
Even a badly worded statement can inspire. Even a poorly made gesture can move. The film Cloud Atlas is a moving mess, and despite its gaping flaws, I'm glad it exists. It's not the best version out there, but who cares? Still the book.
And we'll set the future story in, Korea. Oh, that will never cause any problems, ever. Mitchell, you're a genius! What's this? A 1916 edition of the New York Times?
Boy, that D.W. Griffith sure is a crackerjack. Why, I say his Intolerance is the film equivalent of Beethoven's Ninth.
Oh, balderdash, that old crackpot's pulled a boner. Fractured timelines, a shattered structure, it's all a mess of jumbled up hogwash.
Oh, come now, you know what that old Roman salt Longinus used to say about over-ambition.
To miss a high aim is to fail without shame.
Eureka! I have discovered the oldest story written by humanity!
We are connected!
We're connected!
No boundaries!
You match connected through space and time forever!
What Grog think?
Grog think use of Cro-Magnon face offensive.
I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions. I recall, I really don't know clouds at all.
Use Cro-Magnon face, no diminished message universality.
Cro-Magnon face take away work from Cro-Magnon actor is offensive.
Grog miss point of work. Species boundaries no matter.
Oh, Grog think act should check act privilege.
Ack, hate that phrase. Grog am asshole.
Oh, now Grog asshole for point out act am asshole.
Yes, Grog asshole. Why Grog no go back to friends on Boulder.org and make post about privilege?